right, so we are speaking to constitutional lawyer Bobby Mkangi and Professor Ben Sihanya, who is a lawyer and a professor of law at the University of Nairobi. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning on KTN News Center. So I'd like us to pick our conversation just right from where Kenyans have left it at. Then it looks like the BBI committee will have a lot of work to do when it comes to explaining to Kenyans what this document is all about when it comes to the expansion of the executive. I'll begin with Wakili Mkangi.
Yes, very instructive and informative views coming from Wananchi, considering their views on what was recently released and relaunched. And we could hear that their issues are very much within the very important institutions that run our country, the very center of our societal political organization, and that is the executive and the judiciary. And this is very telling to the extent that it shows that Wananchi are keenly following the process. It shows that Wananchi really understand and have mastered what is of importance to be looked into. At the beginning of the show, you introduced the show by saying that the BBI proposal introduces a hybrid between a presidential and parliamentary system. I hold a contrary view. I think we largely remain with the presidential system, and it is within a formality, nomenclature, and wording that sounds as if we are holding on to or bringing or infuse aspects of a parliamentary system into our constitution. And why do I say this? I say this because when you look at the BBI proposal, power is still centralized, held and wielded by the president. And what do I mean by power? Power in its two very important prongs in terms of statehood and statecraft, in terms of the bureaucracy that executes the will of the people. And the president still remains the head of government and the head of state. The prime minister that is proposed in BBI is very much a merger of what we already have today in terms of a super minister, a position that is right now being executed by Honorable Matiang'i, and the leader of majority who leads government legislative agenda in parliament, a position being implemented and enforced right now by Honorable Kimunya. So right. It's a fusion of that. And the president still is the one who selects the cabinet. The prime minister simply supervises and chairs several committees, as is with the currency right now. And so to me, this is not even a hybrid because it has not separated the powers and the prongs that are beholden to statehood and the governance of the state.
Right.
That government, head of government and head of state have not been divided. And you would see this if you go back to the historiography of our constitution making, what Kenyans had wanted before and what was presented in Bomas in terms of the division, clear division of a prime minister who heads government categorically and the head of state who upholds the state machinery.
All right, so
and
let
this
me
was
bring
also in the harmonized draft constitution. So for me, I think it is a misnomer to try and say that this is a hybrid system. the way I would understand it.
All right, so Professor Sihanya, you know, it is a proposal by the BBI task force team saying that it will be an inclusive process. Yet we are seeing that the president is the same person to appoint a prime minister from the ruling party, and this prime minister will be an MP. And of course, there is a catch in it that probably looks pleasing to Kenyans, that this prime minister will not even get an added salary. The prime minister will only be getting the same salary that he or she has been getting. Then we have the position of the two deputy prime ministers. How will this be an inclusive government?
Thank you so much, Brenda. Bobby Mkangi, it's nice to debate these issues with you. There's certain preliminary points that I need to make clear, as well as certain misconceptions and misrepresentations of both fact and law that I hear in my colleagues' presentation, and I hear it out there. One, the BBI steering committee, assisted by the experts, had to grapple with a fundamental question. The fundamental question is, what is the model of executive legislative structure that is most suitable for Kenya? And so the first point is, it's not just executive, it's executive legislative structure. And we looked at models that have been applied in Kenya before and in other countries. But Brenda, these are two models. The two main models out here which have been applied in Kenya are, at independence, we adopted the almost pure, or what was called the imported British Westminster model, where you have a prime minister at the head of government, and you have at the head of government. And then, of course, you would have the Queen of England, or maybe in some countries, the president as head of state. That did not work. That did not work, sorry. Then we had, because they saw so much power over time that was concentrated in the office of either prime minister in countries like Kenya or Uganda or Zimbabwe, and then or later on the president. Then 2010, and Wakili Mkangi was part of that process. They gave us the 2010 constitution, which now was a fundamental shift to the American presidential model. It is the president. Mr. President is the fulcrum of political activity, economic activity in the country. That has not worked. And all the crises we have had in Kenya, whether you are calling it 0708 crisis, the post-election crisis or stalemate we had in 2017, 2018, which was only helped by the handshake and hence BBI, was also because the presidential model is not working. So the question is, this is actually hybrid. This is hybrid, and I think, let me go specifically to the question that you are raising. And some of the speakers who spoke just a few minutes ago, members of the public, got it very right, that this is kind of inclusive and shared government. So I would like to discuss this with the listeners, and let us appreciate the fact that we cannot have in Kenya a pure model that Mr. Mkangi is proposing, that you have a pure head of state there and separately, totally a pure head of government. So this, what does this model in the BBI, what is its beauty? It's called homegrown, or in a more difficult concept, it's called autochthonous. Homegrown, Kenyan, Afro-Kenyan approach to our own problems and how to solve them. So the inclusivity that, Brenda, you have raised is very, very important. You have a president who is elected directly by the people. You have a prime minister who, and you cannot just appoint anybody as prime minister. I hear people saying that you can appoint anybody, any relative, any husband or wife, or somebody from the village, your fellow villager. That's the rumor. That's the misrepresentation, which is so wrong, and it's not based on not reading what is here. The prime minister is nominated by the president, but must be the leader of a party or a coalition of parties that are the majority in the House. That's not just anybody.
All right, so Prof.
So that is actually the main point that some people are missing.
All right, so Prof.
Not anybody who can be nominated.
Okay,
not anybody can be nominated as Prime Minister.
All right, so Professor.
It must be that you come from a. Yes.
So, Professor, let me just bring in Wakili Mkangi. And Wakili, when you look at the duties of the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Ministers, and also the President, it is well articulated by the proposed BBI report. But the duties of the Deputy Prime Minister is what is really silent. And that is why even the Deputy President, William Ruto, was questioning the expansion of these positions when it comes to the executive.
Very, very, very true. And I still go back to the issue of and perhaps lead to the question of what Kenyans are asking. Then why amend the constitution for this? And Mwalimu has said that the president has been the fulcrum of power holding and power wielding, and that has not worked. BBI does not change that. The proposals do not change that at all. The president is still the fulcrum of power holding and power wielding. He's still the head of state and head of government. So if we did sit down as a country and look at and give views, and we noted that this is a problem, how come we've arrived at the same destination, that we cannot separate these two important aspects of state and governance? The Prime Minister, yes, nominated or coming from the political party or coalition of political parties that bear influence, and that influence, because we use numbers to indicate who is superior to whom in our politics, is the one who commands the majority in the House. So this is a misnomer in the sense that you get this person who has traversed the country, convinced constituents to vote for his or her party or coalition of parties, and then when he or she comes to Parliament, heads a government that he or she has not nominated or put together a cabinet that and manifesto that he does not or she does not command avenues of how to implement, and simply does this in assistance of the president. And that's why even the question is, we still have a deputy president. Mm-hmm. What's the work of the deputy president? We still have, now we have a prime minister who, if you demarcate these powers, then you can say will be the legislative head for government in parliament. And so questions also amount to the different scenarios. What happens if this majority leader, who is now prime minister, does not head or come from the same political persuasion as the president? How does he or she implement the manifesto of a president that they do not share a political focus? And so these are some of the issues that Kenyans are asking and saying, if we still remain at the same position, mm-hmm. that the president still bears the government, still heads the state, the prime minister, to me, in my evaluation, is an instrument of the presidency in parliament, then really nothing has changed. And we are putting more positions in the hands of the president. And when you look at the BBI report, it is saying that it is doing this to respond to the axiom of the winner takes it all.
So,
but we are adding to the all, mm-hmm. and actually raising the stakes of elections from where we are into the future.
All right, so Professor Sihanya, then what sort of democracy then will Kenya have? Should we go that way and, the way of adopting this BBI report? Because when it comes to removing the Prime Minister from office, it says that the President can remove the Prime Minister or members of Parliament can remove the Prime Minister through a vote of no confidence. And this will, raise concern because probably if today the President wakes up and doesn't feel your leadership, I'll bring in someone else. So democracy is on trial when it comes to that appointment. Professor Sihanya.
Thank you, Brenda. There are certain also difference of interpretation that I hear from, and which are even contradictory from Mr. Mkangi and in some quarters. The President and the Prime Minister, there is this idea of sharing power and the issue of inclusivity. A lot of powers, as you have rightly pointed out, under the proposed Article 151A, are to help check presidential power. For instance, this is the leader of government business in the National Assembly. That's a substantive role which is to be granted by the Constitution. This is not a super minister. A super minister, the way we know it in Kenya and other countries, is a direct presidential appointee who does not owe any other authority their appointment. They owe only the president. But this officer, the Prime Minister, owes it to the party, owes it to Kenyans, etc. So that's one of the really unfortunate misrepresentations that is coming out. This is not a super minister at all. Then you can see that there is quite a lot of chairing a committee of the cabinet is a substantive role, which qualifies presidential power. And this is also part of the inclusivity and the power sharing, so that the president is not imperial the way the president has been in the past. And just to address you much more directly, Brenda, because those are some of the issues that I'm hearing from Mr. Mkangi and others, that what is the work of the DP? The DP's powers have not been changed. The DP is still the deputy president to deputize, which is a substantive power. The deputy president is also assisting the president, and that also belongs to the issue of the state. The DP is still a member of the National Security Council. The DP has still substantive powers, and all these are to help share power at the top. Because our problem in Kenya, Brenda, our problem in Kenya has been the reality and perception that the president has too many powers which they can exercise. So briefly, the issue you are raising, Brenda, what about the dismissal, or what some lawyers would call disappointment of the Prime Minister? So you have a two-pronged model. One is, of course, as you have said, the president has a role in that, and the second one is that you have the House expressing voting on a vote of no confidence, or which is really one of the typical formulae or methodologies in the models, executive legislative models that follow the parliamentary system. And that means that if the president simply wakes up and for no cause dismisses the Prime Minister, the president has a political issue to deal with in the House. That's another way of sharing. So the president can only make such a decision knowing that Parliament would work along with the president. So the president cannot be reckless in such a situation, because the Prime Minister is somebody who ought to enjoy the confidence and support of the House. And this is not somebody you are just going to wake up and dismiss.
All right. So
the president will be more accountable to the party system, and the president will be responsible in real time to the House. As of now, the president is not accountable in real time to the House, because ministers have to be called much later to committees.
All right.
Because you can't call the president.
All right. So let me bring in Wakili Mkangi in 2 minutes. Wakili, kindly answer this question in 2 minutes because we need to take a short commercial break and come back. And it's good what Prof. Sihanya has talked about in terms of nominating, actually appointing members of the cabinet or ministers from the National Assembly. And this is what Kenyans didn't want. They wanted politics to be separated from the leadership of the cabinet.
And it's very true because it's not that we've never had ministers who come from the cabinet. And the other fact is that there's nothing that stops the president right now from nominating or tapping somebody who is a member of parliament. The only difference is that once tapped, they must relinquish their seat in parliament. It has happened before. Waziri Duncan Kazungu was a member of parliament and he was tapped, and several other ministers were from parliament. So let's say the fact is that the president can still select his ministers from parliament right now, even from Senate. The only difference is that, and as you said, Kenyans wanted a clear separation of powers. They wanted to excuse their ministers who should undertake technocratic and professional policy implementation duties from the day-to-day weekend politics, so that they can concentrate on delivery of services. So saying that if ministers come from parliament, they'll be more accountable and in real time, I think it's not true. We've seen that before. Kenyans clamored for a new constitution because Moi's government, he picked ministers from parliament, and there was no accountability. Corruption was abound. Ministers were not accountable to people. So I think in as much as it opens the pool to tap for talent, it's a good thing, but the president, as of now, is allowed to pick MPs as cabinet secretaries. Only that they cannot undertake those two duties together. So if they agree to be cabinet secretaries, they have to relinquish their post as MPs, and that's really what Kenyans wanted.
All right. So, gentlemen, kindly stay with me. I need us to take a short commercial break. We shall come back and continue that discussion on matters to do with the BBI on the executive, the expansion of the executive, not only the executive, but also the legislature. So stay tuned to KTN News Center for much more after the short commercial break I'm taking right now.